Welcome to The Straight Stitch, a podcast about sewing and other fiber arts. This is episode 60, and my name is Janet Szabo. I'll be your guide as we explore all things sewing. I literally just rolled into my driveway about an hour ago from my Thanksgiving trip to Seattle, so this is going to be something of a drive-by episode in terms of my current sewing projects, because basically the only thing I did last week was work on an English paper piecing project, and even that I didn't devote a whole lot of time to. I left on November 23rd, which was the Saturday before Thanksgiving. It was actually the day before my birthday. My birthday's on November 24th, so I drove to Spokane on Saturday, spent the night, drove to Seattle on Sunday, stopped at my daughter's apartment, took the ferry across Puget Sound to Poulsbo, Washington, where my family and I had rented an Airbnb for the week. So I went to get everything ready, and my mother and my sister's fiance came on Monday night. I went to the airport and picked them up, and then my two daughters, my older daughter came down from Alaska, and she was staying at her in-laws, and my younger daughter lives in Seattle, and she and her boyfriend came over. So it was a busy week with family. And in the winter, I tend not to try to drive the entire way in one day. It's easier if I break it up and go halfway to Spokane. And yesterday morning, I dropped my mother off at the airport and took off so I could get over Snoqualmie Pass before the worst of the traffic, and I made it to Spokane, and then today I drove the rest of the way home. So if you celebrate Thanksgiving here in the U.S., I hope that you had a good one. We did. We had a great time at my daughter's in-laws' house. I've spent Thanksgiving there the last several years, and in case you're wondering, yes, my husband stays home. We've done that for the past 30-some years because either he was hunting or I was traveling. He doesn't like to leave the property. And truly with animals, it's just easier if one of us stays here. He had a great week himself. He got a lot of things crossed off of his to-do list, did a lot of machine maintenance and equipment maintenance, and puttering in his shop by himself makes him very, very happy. So please don't feel bad for him that he got left here by himself, because he enjoys that. And I enjoy it when I'm here by myself too. We're just two introverts and we like to be alone sometimes, and it's fine. It's worked great for us. And for today's episode, I have an interview with Chris Hall Murphy, who owns Simply Classic LLC. Chris is a bag maker and a bag designer. I've wanted to have a bag designer on the show for a while, and I stumbled across Chris's YouTube videos a few months ago, and she graciously agreed to an interview. We had a great conversation, and it's a little bit on the longer side, so I'm going to stop talking, and we're going to jump right into the interview, and I hope that you will learn a few things about bag making, and if you haven't tried it, I hope that you will be inspired. The Sorella hip bag that Chris designed and released recently is on my short list of bags to make, and she's just got a great repertoire of really classic, sophisticated looking bag patterns. So I hope that you will check her out. Chris, welcome to the podcast. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Janet. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I haven't had any bag makers on, so this is a new area for discussion, and it's one that I'm interested in. I think a lot of our listeners are interested in too. So we'll start with a little bit of background information about you. How did you learn to sew?
So, like so many of us, right, in our age group, we learned how to sew from our moms. My grandmother sewed, my mom sewed. And when I was about 12, 13 years old, I was too young to get a job, but I was too old to go out and play with all the kids. And so in the summertime, I would sit in the house and mope, and mom would say, what do you want to do? I don't know. So anyway, she taught me how to sew. And so we had an old, singer sat at the dining room table, and she taught me how to cut patterns out. I made, at that point, skirts and pajama bottoms and the things that we tend to make when we're young, and maybe some few stuffed animals here and there by hand. And then in junior high school, we had the whole cooking shop, like home ec class and woodworking kind of combination. And I wanted to be part of that because I wanted to get into the sewing part of it. So we made aprons in that class, and that's kind of how probably my first ever sewing class started. And then in high school, we had sewing classes, believe it or not. And I grew up in New Hampshire. And of course, this is a very long time ago. I'll just leave it at that. And I took the sewing class where we had to make a wool blazer from start to finish. We took the whole semester to do it, and we had to do it by hand.
Wow.
And it was just like a work of art. And I live in Georgia now, so I no longer have the blazer. It is way too hot in Georgia to wear a wool blazer. But I've always had that passion. Well, then I went to college, and I ended up being a CPA and I kind of abandoned sewing. So during college, I didn't have the time or the money. And then, of course, study for the CPA. Then that was a couple of years of my life where I did nothing but study, so no time to sew. And after I graduated, passed the exam, kind of got settled in my job, I decided to revisit it and wasn't sure if I was going to really take to it again. So I went to Walmart and bought a really cheap machine just because I didn't want to spend a lot of money until I knew this is what I wanted to do. And within about 10 minutes on that machine, it all came back to me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I miss this so much. So, of course, at that point, started investing in more machines. And I decided to get into home decorating type things. So I was making bed skirts and slip covers and window treatments and that type of thing. And went to school up in North Carolina. There was an academy that specifically taught home dec stuff, and it was you could go, for a weekend or a week and take a class in whatever it is you wanted to learn how to do. And so I really enjoyed that and did a lot of that. But what I found was that I was having to go into people's homes, and they want you to not only make the window treatment, they want you to install the window treatment. And, you get into liability issues. And so I was doing pretty good with that. Everything was going fine. And then I had a life-changing event, and everything came to a screeching halt and didn't sew for a few years. Well, when I got back into it, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to get back into the home decorating and get into people's homes and kind of do all that again. Sewing clothing is tough. It's hard enough for your own body, but then when you have to try to do it for everybody else's body, it makes it really hard. So Mom and I went to Houston, and we went to the Houston Quilt Festival, which if you've never been, it is amazing. And walked around for 1,600 aisles. It goes 3 days, and I found a couple of bag patterns. There were some bag makers there, and bought, 2, 3 patterns. Didn't really know what I was going to, whether I was going to like it or not, but went ahead and came home and sewed the first bag and thought, oh my gosh, I like this. This is really cool. And so it began. So that was pre-COVID. That was probably in COVID was what, 2020. So it was probably, I don't know, 2017, 2018 when I started with bags. And that got me started, and it just kind of blossomed from there. And here I am today.
So your business has been open since about 2020?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And I started, the goal was I was still working. My husband and I had a CPA firm here in Augusta. And so on the nights and weekends, I'd sew, and you can only make so many bags for yourself. And once people started seeing the bags, they wanted me to make them a bag. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to make bags and I'm going to sell the bags. And that's how it all started. So I did that and was just selling to local people, and had a website, tried to sell a few online. It was hit or miss, maybe sold 1 or 2. But what I was finding is that the local people wanted a bag, but they wanted it like they wanted this bag in this color, and they wanted me to add a pocket in the front, or take away a pocket, or add a center divider, or make the strap longer. Or it was like no bag was perfect for everybody wants their own thing. I mean, let's face it, we're women, we have our ways that we want specific how to carry things, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So what I found was that I started altering the patterns that I had and got into the design process of it and thought, wow, I think I really like that part. I think it took the analytical part of my brain and kind of coupled it with the creative part, and just really enjoyed creating and looking at a photo and saying, okay, let me see if I can figure out how to make this bag, and kind of engineering it and making it. So my real in this whole thing, obviously I love sewing. Sewing is my passion, but I really love the design process. That's probably what me. So I figured, well, if I'm going to write patterns, bag patterns, I need to carry the product so people can make the bag, right? So I started sourcing products. So if you source faux leather, you have to source hardware, and you have to source all linings and all the other things. And then really got into the leather part of it as well, and wanted to find leather that people use on their machines, sew with on the machines without skiving. And so my husband and I went to Italy and found a supplier. And what I sell are lamb skins. They're really thin. They work amazing, and you don't have to skive. They really treat it just like faux leather. You have to stabilize it like faux leather, and they make just amazing, gorgeous bags. But for me, I think the most important part of this whole process is the education. And I really want to show people and teach people how to make a bag and be successful. There's nothing more satisfying to me than leaving a class of students and they all have big smiles on their face saying, I can't believe I made this. Wow. They're just in awe of it. And so that's super important to me.
That is actually how I found you. Your YouTube videos started popping up in my YouTube feed, and I've
Okay.
really appreciated them because you are very methodical in your teaching, and you give alternatives. So you'll tell people, you can do this option here, or you can do this option here. And your videos are long, which I also like because I like to play them in the background when I'm working. Um, and maybe that's a lot of extra work for you, but I appreciate that you go so in depth into your bag making. So when did you start your YouTube channel?
So the YouTube channel started, I think it's been up now for about 3 years. It was started right around the same time. My husband and I sold our firm a couple years ago, and basically let's see, we're in 2024. So beginning of 2023 is when I really started with Simply Classic full time. So it hasn't been that long, but that's when I was really able to dedicate a lot more time to videos and education and classes and that type of thing.
So do you teach locally or regionally as well as on YouTube?
Yes, we have shops that contact us, and we travel to, like I was in Chattanooga early this year. They've invited me to come back. I do teach at trade shows, and a lot of times when you're in the trade shows, like the Houston show, we just vended at the Houston show. I didn't teach there, but sometimes I do short seminars or classes there. And more shops are reaching out to us to come and teach. And bag making is just I don't want to say it's a new thing because it's certainly not. It's been around for a long time, but it is something that more and more people, I think, are exploring because they're looking for another avenue. They're looking for another outlet to follow their passion.
You can tell me if I'm off base, but my sense seems to be that more people are exploring bag making, excuse me, because it's getting easier to source the materials. I've been
Yeah.
doing, off and on making bags for a couple of years. And I remember when it was next to impossible to find hardware. or zipper tape or things
Mm.
like that. And it seems to me that those materials are getting to be easier to find. So maybe that's helping to boost the interest in bag making.
I think so. I think so. And I think that like there's a lot of bag makers out there in the past that, like for instance, Biani is she's been around for 20, 20, 25 years, has a bunch of patterns, amazing patterns. She does a fantastic job. All of her patterns are kind of based towards quilter. So she uses a lot of, or all quilting cotton, a lot of quilting in her bags. And that is a whole different segment of bag making. I almost feel like in bag, you've got different segments of sewing. You have garment, home deck, bag making, and then in bag making, you also have different segments. So I feel like, there's certainly obviously a huge market for that. And that's a great way for quilters to kind of cross over. But what I'm trying to do is to take it a step further and use some of the materials that make the bags look higher end and look more classy, and something that you may use for several years and pass down to your daughter or niece or something, and really are more designer inspired, kind of a luxe bag.
I think I watched the other day the one where you did the crossbody that was inspired by the Dooney and Burke bag.
Yes.
Yeah. So is that where you get a lot of your inspiration is just looking around and
Yes, and it's amazing. Viewer customers send me photos all the time. I mean, I can tell you, I literally have a folder that I've printed out of pictures of bags that people have sent saying, "Can you make this, Chris? Can you make this, Chris? Can you make us a pattern?" Because there's so many amazing things out there.
can you talk a little bit about what goes into a pattern from start to finish?
Yes, I would be happy to. And I
Okay.
think that a lot of people think it's a quick and easy thing. And it's far from that. At least for me, it is. I'm sure everybody has their own way of doing it. But basically, what I do is I literally start out with either a photo or with some kind of idea. I mean, sometimes I just walk around, like we were in Italy, I took a lot of photos of bags because they had some different designs over there. So I take that and I figure out the measurements and start with just like cutting paper, kind of like paper dolls when we were kids, trying to figure out the measurements. So I'll cut and I'll piece and I'll draw and I'll make sure that I come up with the right dimensions. And once I do that, I will use Adobe Illustrator to get the pattern pieces worked out. I print those out and then I start making renditions of the bag. So I usually, anywhere between, I'd say 3 to 12 times I make the bag to get not only the dimensions right, but also the stabilizers. Make sure the stabilizers are in the right place. Make sure that the pockets are deep enough, and etc. I mean, I go through a lot to do that. Once that's done, I usually either use the bag or give it to someone who uses it. I have what I call a real life tester, and she will carry the bag around for a couple weeks and come back to me and give me feedback and say, "Hey, this pocket, I have an extra large cell phone and my cell phone didn't fit in that pocket." Or I every single time I put my bag over my shoulder, the snap popped open, or whatever it may be that we have to fix. So I go through the process of fixing that. And then I write the pattern. So what that means, what is entailed in writing it, is I make the bag, and every step of the way, I take a photo. So I'll sew a little bit, take a photo, sew a little bit, take a photo, and go through that whole process. And if you've never seen any of my patterns, they are full color. Some of them have well over 100 photos of step by step exactly what you need to do.
Wow.
Then from there, I take those photos and put them into, and right now I'm just using Microsoft Word and actually write the pattern. So I, write the words out, match them up with the photos, provide the cutting chart and get the whole pattern written. Once that's done, I send it to testers. So I have a team of testers all around the United States that will take the pattern and go through the pattern, make the bag, make sure I didn't make any mistakes or errors. I mean, they're checking for things like pattern pieces to make sure that they all fit together, as well as making sure that the stabilizer is the right size, making sure, that I didn't miss any hardware on the list, or whatever it may be, as well as grammatical and spelling errors. I also have a couple of people that proofread and go through and make sure that, I don't have spelling error. They don't actually make the bag. They're just simply reading over the pattern to make sure that I don't miss anything. And then from there, I film a YouTube video and get the video to my editor. She edits it. And usually by that point, we're ready to release the pattern. So it takes roughly, I would say, 2 to 3 months to write a pattern. And that's I would say, a good case where I'm, pretty much on it the whole time, and I'm not distracted by everything else I have going on in my life. So
I
it's a
was
long
a,
process.
I was a knitting designer for 16 years, and I wrote over 100 knitting patterns. And it's always been frustrating to me to hear people say, why do I have to pay $10 for a couple of pieces of paper?
Yep,
And I don't think that there's enough appreciation for the amount of work that goes into getting those pieces of paper into a form that someone can actually recreate what you did and be successful.
I agree. I
So
agree.
it's nice to hear you explain all of that.
Yes. And, we've got the PDF patterns that people can purchase on the site, but I also have paper patterns. So in addition, I send the paper patterns or send the patterns to the printer, and they print them. And that right there by itself, honestly, I do not make any money on patterns. I really don't. I mean, it's not a money-making business, in my opinion. It is an avenue to give people a tool to be able to make something successful, right? So it feeds into the products and the education. But overall, really, I don't think being a pattern designer or pattern maker is the thing. You're not going to make $1 million on that. It's just not going to
Sure.
happen.
Right.
You got to do it for the passion.
Don't we all?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the machinery that you use and maybe what a home sewist might need?
Yes, I would be happy to. So back when I was doing home decorating stuff, I actually bought a walking foot industrial machine. It was a Consew 206 RB5. I've had it for 20 years and have learned how to service it myself because I have no one around me that can service that kind of machine. Nobody around me even sells industrial machines. So it has been, it came when I bought it, it had a clutch motor, which we had a love-hate relationship. And recently, I say recently, over the past, I don't know, 6, 7 years, replaced it with a servo motor, and it just literally changed the way the machine sewed. I mean, it was amazing. And of course, now that's how they sell them. But that is my main machine. Now, more and more people are buying industrial machines for their homes. I'm finding a lot of my customers, and especially the customers who make bags to sell them, buy industrial machines. They're not, compared to a lot of those quilting embroidery machines, they're not that expensive. You're looking at $2,000, $3,000. It's not that bad, right? But a lot of times it's not the cost, it's the space. It's the room. People don't have and they're heavy, right? So if you don't have a husband or somebody that can help you get it in your house or move it around when you need to, it's impossible. So I have been, when I was in Houston at Market, I took my products to all of the different sewing machine vendors that were at the show. And I said, all right, sit me down in front of a machine that will sew this product. And there were 2 overall machines that did better than any others. One is a Burnett 08, which is the brand new machine that they just came out with, and that thing is amazing. The other was a Necky C35, which is a fairly new machine for them as well. Now, the Neckies are a new machine to me. I had never heard of Necky, and I did listen to your bag making podcast that you had. I don't, it was earlier in the year. And I noticed you mentioned a Necky, and I wasn't sure which Necky machine you have. Which one is it?
So I have an old Necky industrial. It's called a Necky BV, and it was probably made in the 50s or possibly the 60s. It came out of a department store in Salt Lake City. And it's actually sitting right next to me here in my office. I have it in a treadle table.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, but keep going because I want to talk a little bit about industrial machines.
Okay. Okay. So the Necky 35, and I'm actually working with Necky right now because the way I understand it, the C35, they do not sell online, they only sell in stores. So in order to make them accessible for everybody, we're trying to figure out what machine will work that we can use our products to, that will work on our products. Okay. They are working right now to figure out they have a machine they think is going to work pretty good. And if so, I would like to get one of those machines and start using it on videos because I really want to help the home sewist be successful in bag making. I do have a Burnett 08 that I'm going to start using on videos. So I really want to explore more and more domestic machines that people can use at home to be successful with bag making. I do know that the Janome HD9s work well because I've used those in classrooms before. And there's another one, and I think it's a Juki. I want to say it's a TL18 that is very similar to the HD9 that works really well. So I am kind of on a mission to find those machines for a couple of reasons. One, because if somebody's going to a retreat or some kind of bag making class and they want to bring their machine with them, they're not going to be able to lug their industrial machine. So we need to find something that is compact and easily moved around that people can take with them when they go to these events and they can still be successful and have a nice bag at the end.
That's okay. I'm going to have to look up this Necky because I have a soft spot in my heart for Neckies. I have a Juki 1541
Oh, good. Okay. Yep.
and I bought it not necessarily to make bags, but because my husband has a construction company and he has been coming to me and saying, would you make this out of heavy canvas? Would you make this out of 1,000 denier cordura? And finally, I just said I need to buy an industrial machine. Um, and I enjoy sewing on that machine a lot. It has taken a little bit to adjust the servo motor so that it's not going at 200 miles an hour. Um, and I've also sewn on that Burnett 08. Our quilt store has one, and I was very impressed. If I hadn't bought that Juki 1541, I would be seriously looking at that Burnett 08.
And they're really reasonably priced. I think that they're like right at 1995 for the machine.
Yeah,
And I mean, that's you can't beat that.
no,
That's a machine that will do what that appears it's going to do. It's going to be that's a good price point.
definitely. And behind me in my office is my Bernina Q20 quilting machine, which was easily 7 times the cost of my Juki 1541.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you're right when you say that some of the other machines can be even pricier than an industrial. Do you have a post bed machine or a cylinder
I I do have
machine?
a cylinder arm and I
Okay.
have a Texo 2750 Pro. And the reason why I chose Texo, I did a lot of looking around and comparing before I bought my cylinder arm. And because really, I think for the most part, industrials are kind of all made the same. It's just there's different names on them. So it really doesn't come, in my opinion, it doesn't come down to what machine. It's more what the machine can do for you and the price point and how much support they give. And so I found that Texo had they have a YouTube channel. They have to like walk you through how to set up the machine. They have a Facebook support group that you can ask questions if you're having problems with any kind of machine. It also came with more bells and whistles than any of the others.
Hmm.
So it has laser light, it has a drop down edge guide. It had a flatbed table that came with it as well. And so a lot of the other cylinder arm machines I looked at did not have those things. And it was one of the cheaper machines. I mean, again, they're not all, when you look at the prices, they're not that far apart from each other, but it was really one of the better priced ones. So I ordered it and it actually came out of Canada. I believe they have a location now here in the United States. I want to say it's in either Nevada or Idaho, someplace like that.
Hmm.
And I think they ship out of there now. But anyway, mine came from Canada and I live in Georgia and it was here within like 2 weeks of me ordering it. And its feet, it's interchangeable with my console. So really it just
Nice.
there
Yeah.
was a huge learning curve with it. I just, depending on what I need to sew, I'm either sitting at one or the other.
So where do you see your business going in the next couple years?
So we have this year we had some great things happen. We got picked up by Brewer, and I don't know if you're familiar with Brewer,
Uh-huh.
but Brewer is a this one of the largest wholesale sewing distributors in the world. And so we are now, they're carrying our products, and we are finding that we're in more and more stores across the United States. So that's super exciting. When we were at Houston Market, we also got picked up by a European distributor. And so
Wow.
now our products will be all over Europe. They ship to all countries in Europe except for England for some reason. I'm not sure why. But if you live in the European market, you will be seeing Simply Classic show up in your stores and locations. And so I'm kind of looking at getting the product in more and more people's hand, obviously through retail stores, and then also really looking to provide more education to people, hands-on classrooms, hands-on education. We here in Georgia, we are building a small warehouse so we can go ahead and stock all of our stuff. We've kind of already outgrown where we're at. And we're going to have some offices there, and then eventually are going to have a classroom. And so we really are hoping people are going to start coming here to us. We've got where we've bought our land is in a small town called Thompson, Georgia. It's kind of good. I mean, just really little. You can walk around visit all the shops, and they have a couple good restaurants. And so it's going to be really a good experience, a good small town Southern experience when you come to a Simply Classic class. And then in the future too, we also, and this is through some of the shops, Request and Brewer, set up some kind of Simply Classic teaching. How do I say this? Like a program where I can have teachers come in and I can teach them how to teach the Simply Classic products so that I'm not having to be around the United States. I mean, it's going to be a lot of traveling, right? And I can only be in so many
Sure.
places at once.
Right.
So kind of a certified teaching program. So those are our future goals. For 2025 is to try to get, and then of course we're always working on more patterns. We have quarterly subscription boxes that we do, and they're what we call a mystery box. So what happens is you can sign up, and every quarter you get a new box, which includes a never seen before Simply Classic pattern and all the materials to make the bag, except for the stabilizers. The stabilizers are not included, although we are working with a stabilizer company to develop our own stabilizer. So that might,
Yay.
so, because that's the one thing I think is still kind of hard to find.
Yeah.
But so yeah, and then we have online classes as well in leather bag making. And I mean, we're just wide open here and just loving every minute of it.
It sounds exciting. So how can people find you?
So you can go to our website, simplyclassic.net. And of course, all our products are available there. And then you can go to our YouTube channel. It's at Simply Classic, and find us there. And of course, we've got hundreds of videos for all of the patterns. You do not need to purchase the pattern to watch the video. You can watch the video first, see if it's something you want to tackle, and then buy the pattern. And then, of course, we have a Facebook group. It's the Simply Classic Inspiration Facebook group, and we're on Instagram.
Awesome. I'm really intrigued by your Sorella belt bag.
Oh, yes, that was our newest. That was our third quarter subscription box. And it has really done well and taken off. And of course, so what we do is the subscription box is released the last 2 weeks of the quarter. And then the actual pattern is released 30 days after that. So if you are a subscription box member, you get, I guess, first access, you could say, to the pattern and the video. And then, like I said, 30 days later, it's released. So it's it's really a cool kind of designer inspired hip bag. I mean, it's not like the other ones you've seen around. It's kind of almost like a little bag in itself, like a little flat bag, right? It's kind of
Right?
cool.
I know fanny packs have been coming back and you say fanny packs and everybody gets an
Yeah.
image in their head and it is not a fanny pack. It is a very sophisticated looking belt bag.
Well, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to talk about or have we covered everything?
Ah, gosh, I think we have. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you about this because this is easy for me. I love talking about bags and bag making and how everything got started and where we're at and future plans, and it's just so exciting. So,
Well, good. And if we have questions, I might have you back on.
okay, that sounds fantastic. I'd be happy to do that. Even if we have we'll like maybe you can, I don't know, get some questions.
Yeah, we could do a Q&A or
Yeah,
something.
type
That'd be
thing.
great.
Yep. And the other thing too, I want to mention is we do have every Thursday, we have a live stream. It's called the Bagmakers Workroom. And it's 7 o'clock Eastern time, 7 p.m. Eastern time every Thursday, where we go over everything bag making. And so I encourage people to subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell notification so that you're aware of when we are live. And it's just a short little 30 to 45-minute thing. We have maybe little demonstrations, how to sharpen your skills. We feature bags that some of our customers have made. We talk about a little bit of sewing history. I tell you what's going on behind the scenes so everybody's aware of what's happening, and it's a fun time. We take some questions and it's all good.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and hopefully we'll get to chat again.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Janet.
You're welcome. I hope you enjoyed my visit with Chris and that you'll check out her bag patterns. She has something for all skill levels, so if you're a beginner, she's got items for you. She's got items for experienced bag makers. And the links to her website and to her YouTube channel will be in the show notes. The show notes can be found on the podcast website at www.thestraightstitchpodcast.com. My website is www.janetzabo.com. And from there, you can go to my Big Sky Knitting Designs website. You can get to the podcast page. You can also go to my blog where I post pictures of my sewing projects when I have them. And hopefully I'll be getting back into that groove after not posting for a week, but everything will be there. I really appreciate the feedback that I've gotten. I love the podcast reviews that people have been leaving on Apple Podcasts. That really does help us. It helps people to find the podcast. If you have feedback, email me at janet@janetzabo.com or leave a comment on the show notes page or use the fan mail feature, which is a feature that my podcast hosting company Buzzsprout, that's where I host my podcast. They have a fan mail feature and you can use that to send feedback. So I think we've gone on long enough, and hopefully by next week I will have a little bit more sewing content of my own to share. So until next episode, I hope you have a great week and that you get to go sew something.